nanoparticle nasal spray treatment to help fight Alzheimer's disease.
Okay, so first of all, what is Alzheimer's? So Alzheimer's is a neurological disease that is gradually getting worse by age, and it's due to buildup of amyloid plaques in your brain as well as tau protein tangles in the brain. And it primarily affects your thinking, your memory, and your behavior. So what is the importance of solving this problem, or at least making Alzheimer's more manageable? So Alzheimer's is an extremely detrimental disease, and it's affecting over 7 million individuals, and it can also be extremely traumatic to any families who may know somebody with Alzheimer's. And there are currently no cures to Alzheimer's, but there's testing and there's research being done, and there are methods such as gene therapy or cholinesterase inhibitors. So to break it down through the statistics, there are 7 million Americans that live with Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is the 6th leading cause of death in the US, and you can actually have the disease for up to 20 years before you even show symptoms.
Okay, so these are some of the definitions and the key things to know about Alzheimer's disease. And what Sadie had said before is that the main key features of Alzheimer's are the amyloid plaques, which are built up of proteins that they build up in between the neurons and gray matter in the brain, and tau tangles, which are also another protein found in the brain that tangle inside of the neurons. And then another key thing to keep in mind when listening to this presentation is that there's also cerebrospinal fluid, which is a fluid that circulates around the brain and the spinal cord that acts as a filter type of method, and then also an added layer of protection.
So let's look at some current treatments. Modern treatments for Alzheimer's aim at managing symptoms, not curing the disease. Current methods fail to address the buildup of amyloid plaques in the brains and the neurofibrillary tangles, or tau tangles. So one of the most troubling conflicts when dealing with a neurological disease is the blood-brain barrier, which we'll go into further depth. The blood-brain barrier is exactly as it sounds. It's a semi-permeable layer of blood surrounding the brain, and it protects the brain from harmful substances, which is good at its cause, but it makes it very difficult to get drugs and medicines into your brain to help you.
Injecting a shot and eating pills are alternative methods of delivering a drug to treat Alzheimer's disease. However, they both pass the blood-brain barrier, which is a major issue that we're trying to resolve through our nasal spray. Furthermore, injecting a shot targets directly, but it is invasive and it's not self-administered. Also, eating pills solves the issues that injecting a shot failed to address, but it cannot target directly. On the other hand, our nasal spray that we're trying to invent checks all the criteria necessary to conduct a successful delivery.
So what is our ultimate goal? So our ultimate goal, we want to slow the progression of Alzheimer's while using a non-invasive method that will reduce the plaques and the tangles inside of the brain.
So the 3-component system that we've come up with is, first off, the nanoparticles. Those are going to act as the carrier for the medicine. And then what the medicine comprises of are neprilepsine to target the amyloid plaques and break down those proteins. And then sumarimab that targets the tau tangles and is able to break those up as well.
When we were designing nanonodes, we were choosing a few requirements to fulfill. So the first requirement we had to choose from was the nanoparticles inside of our treatment had to be a lipid so that they would be able to go into the brain-blood barrier, and they also had to be nanometers in diameter. The nanoparticles had to contain a amyloid precursor protein receptors so that they would be able to specifically target the amyloid plaques located inside of your brain. They also had to deliver the correct dose of neprilysin and sumarinumab to treat the amyloid plaques and the tau tangles inside your brain. It had to be a non-invasive treatment, and it had to be effective.
So what are nanoparticles? So the makeup of these nanoparticles are that it's comprised of the shell that holds the drug, And then the outside has the receptors, which were mentioned earlier, the APP, precursor proteins, and that is able to lock on to the amyloid plaques and then deliver the drug. And the reason why we chose nanoparticles are because they're able to go through the blood-brain barrier in a non-invasive way and also limit any further complications that needles or surgeries that might have.
Okay, so one of the drugs that is actually located within the nanoparticle is the anti-tau monoclonal antibody. So these lab-made antibodies, they are made to bind to the protein. They're not actually there to destroy them, but actually to bind to them, neutralize them, and stop the spread. And the antibody that we decided to use was semirimab, which will block the spread of the tau tangles.
So here's a look at the spray. It's a once daily spray, and you just put one spray in the nostril. You get 60 sprays in the bottle, so that'll last you about a month. It's a 0.9% saline solution. That's just some information about it. It's self-administered, simple, and safe. Again, it's a non-invasive method. And then additionally, there is a pH buffer just to get the correct pH, which is necessary.
So this is a pathway of how the nasal spray would reach the brain. First, the drug is administered as a spray into the upper nasal cavity, which is the the upper space in the patient's nose. Second, in the olfactory region, drugs like neprilysin and semirimab come into contact with specialized neurons. Third, the nanoparticles will be taken up by olfactory neurons and will be transported along the axons into the olfactory bulb. Lastly, once the nanoparticles reach the target brain region, they will release the drug at the site of amyloid plaques and tau tangles. This is the SWOT analysis of our nasal spray. One of our strengths is that it's capable of bypassing the blood-brain barrier and delivering medication directly to the brain. One weakness that we have is that Alzheimer's disease patients may forget to spray it daily, which would reduce the effectiveness of our drug. An opportunity that we have is the increasing number of Alzheimer's disease patients, as it is estimated to reach 13.8 million in 2060. Lastly, one of our threats is that other novel delivery technologies are also being developed simultaneously, so we would have to devise a way to stand out in the industry.
So with any drug, there are some risks that we have to take, and unfortunately, neprilysin is somewhat risky with high dosages. It can harm healthy neurons and disrupt neuron functions inside of the brain when administered in high doses. It has also been shown to cause cases of hypotension, cardiac arrest, and even renal impairment if the dose is too high. And neprilysin, when it breaks down the amyloid plaques inside of the brain, the plaques don't just vanish. The body has to take care of them, and in specific circumstances, the plaques remain inside of the brain for long periods of time, which will need another medication to get rid of it. To address these consequences, the nasal spray will have a locked dosage limit, because as we are dealing with elderly patients, they might forget if they took their medication or not. And so this locked dosage will prevent them from overdosing on neprilysin and the drug for the tau tangles. Also, to prevent the neprilysin from attacking healthy neurons, the nanoparticles will contain specific receptors that will bind to the targeted plaques so that the neprilysin won't affect and harm the neurons.
So when looking at the effectiveness of your drug, it needs to be affordable, right? It's not going to help anybody if you can't afford it. So a bottle of NanoNose is around $200, and that's going to last you a month, as previously stated. Although that's a high number, that's on par with the other treatment costs.
It might not cure Alzheimer's, but neprilysin will significantly slow down the progression of the disease. It's projected that by 2060, around 14 million Alzheimer's patients will be recorded inside of the US. And if this treatment will become more available for people, it will not only significantly help with the current Alzheimer's epidemic, but it can also pave the way for new technology dealing with nanoparticles for other neurological diseases like ALS, Parkinson's, which are all significantly untreatable due to the blood-brain barrier and the how complicated the diseases are.
In conclusion, the nasal spray called NanoNose would provide a direct pathway that bypasses the blood-brain barrier, addressing a major limitation in current treatments. Also, the nanoparticles include neprilysin and semarimab that target the hypothesized cause of Alzheimer's, which are tau tangles and amyloid plaques. Lastly, this advanced technology will make numerous patients' lives more comfortable and pleasant and pave the path forward for the treatment of other neurological diseases. Thank you.
Thank you.